Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Current Affairs Unfiltered. I'm your host, Paige Fullman. This week, we are taking the money conversation a bit further, and we are going to talk about PACs and super PACs. I brought someone on that is running their own PAC that is a little bit different than the ones that you would think of when you hear the word PAC, and it's an immediately pretty negative connotation. But I've done my research, and I firmly believe that this guest has a great perspective on how PACs can be used for good. When I did my other episode about money and politics, we kind of talked about how the rules around money and politics can make it very difficult. So I feel like our guest today is using those kind of restrictive rules to his advantage, which ultimately advantages all of us. So this week, we are going to be talking to Adam Bishop. Adam is the co-founder and operations manager of the progressive super PAC Just Future Fund. Just Future Fund is a political action committee working outside the two-party framework in order to elect candidates that will actually fight to make the lives of working-class people better. I'm really excited to be talking to Adam, and without further ado, here is our conversation. Adam, thank you so much for coming on. It's great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. So I'm wondering if we could start out with some definitions. PAC stands for Political Action Committee. What exactly is a super PAC, and how does it differ from just a regular PAC?
Yeah, so super PACs are a relatively new form of political action committee. They really only came to be over the last 15 years following the Supreme Court ruling in a case called Citizens United versus the FEC in 2010. So the case revolved around campaign finance law at the time, which outlawed corporations from paid electioneering communications that mentioned a candidate 30 days before an election. The conservative nonprofit Citizens United challenged this law, arguing that it was a violation of their free speech. Ultimately, the Supreme Court agreed with that argument, ruling that corporations and unions did have protected free speech and could thus spend money on independent political communications. And that's what led to the creation of super PACs, or by their government name, independent expenditure-only political action committees. So these groups differ from existing PACs because they're allowed to fundraise unlimited amounts of money from people and corporations, but they're not legally allowed to coordinate or contribute to any political campaigns or political parties directly. Now, before this ruling, the existing types of PACs fell into two categories: separate segregated funds, which are run by a group like a corporation or a union, but they can only raise money from within that group, within that union or corporation, and non-connected committees, which are similar, but they're not run by the group. And they're allowed to solicit funds from anyone. Now, importantly, both of these traditional PACs have fundraising ceilings from donors, so donations are capped at $5,000, while with super PACs, it's unlimited amounts of money.
Of course it is, because that makes perfect amount of sense.
Yeah, absolutely, right? What could go wrong?
So when people are saying like the whole, dark money conversation, do you feel that that's more pointed towards traditionally super PACs than it is towards regular PACs?
So it is largely pointed towards super PACs, but there is a definitional difference between a dark money group and a super PAC. Obviously, the world of campaign finance is not very clear, but a dark money group is actually a nonprofit that isn't registered with the FEC, but rather it's a 501c4 group, which can solicit unlimited amounts of money from anyone, but aren't bound by the same donor reporting rules as a political action committee. But the key difference also is that these 501c4 groups, which are the dark money groups, which can, get money from anybody without reporting it, can only spend 49.9% of their actual incoming money on political electioneering.
God, every time I talk about campaign finance, it just feels bleaker and bleaker.
Right. It's pretty wild how many ways people have found to skirt these laws. And, the entire world of nonprofits is also very, very odd.
Right. So why did you decide to start your PAC, Just Future Fund, instead of going through something like a nonprofit or other type of advocacy group?
Well, I think nonprofits are incredibly important and many do incredibly meaningful work, but they're typically not as direct as the type of action that we'd like to do. Obviously, there is immense value in organizing and infrastructure building that nonprofits do, but it also doesn't always translate to direct electoral results. It's a lot of times it's hard to mobilize in that way on a national level or in a state race. And that structure isn't always conducive with quicker, more startup results, the kind of stuff we're going after.
Right. So as we touched on a little bit, there's a lot of skepticism around PACs. People generally hear the word and they cringe a little bit. They get associated with dark money, corporate influence. What made you decide to work within that framework that is often maybe misrepresented, but also kind of looked down upon?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that skepticism around PACs is, totally justified. I mean, I think there's absolutely too much corporate influence in American politics. A great example is just last year, I think Elon Musk spent nearly $300 million of his own money to elect Donald Trump and other conservatives across the country. So undoubtedly, corporations have far too much influence, and it's far more influence than average Americans. And ultimately, I'd love if super PACs weren't allowed, but it's also the best shot, we believe anyway, to disrupt the current system. We wholeheartedly believe that we can use our super PAC in a way that can more effectively use our limited funds to help progressive candidates win elections. So yeah, it's not ideal, but we think we can use it to our advantage.
So when we first talked, you had told me that your goal was to use this current kind of political structure that we have that is designed to consolidate power at the top to do the opposite. I'm wondering if you could expand on that and tell me, what does that look like in practice?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most simply, it's kind of exactly like what I just said. The current system of campaign finance is designed to give the wealthiest individuals far greater influence in the world of politics. Right now, political spending often equates to political results, but we also know that doesn't have to be the case. In practice, this means using our much more limited funds in what we feel will be a more impactful way, punching far above our weight class to help elect candidates that have the interest of working class Americans in mind. And I don't want to get too much into strategies, but there's so much political spending right now that I think is truly just a waste, from mailers to radio advertisements. Many things are done out of convention rather than efficacy. So I think that's where our largest advantage will come from, is using our limited resources to, in a more effective way, to really punch above our weight, as I mentioned.
I've been reading a lot of discourse about kind of just dissecting the 2024 election, and about a lot of the conversation was like, where did the money go? Like, where did Donald Trump spend that it was the most effective, and where did Kamala spend where it didn't work? And for Donald Trump, it was a lot of like the ad spend was the biggest win for him, especially I'm sure you saw the ad, the Kamala is for them and Donald Trump is for us, or whatever the ad was. That was just so incredibly effective. And it was some like cheapo ad that they threw together that ended up being not a lot of money, but quite possibly the most effective thing that either of the campaigns did.
Yeah, well, it makes you wonder how do we measure efficacy, right? Like, how many people are actually deciding their vote based on a TV ad? And further to your point about where did the money go, right? Like, I think it was over $5 billion were raised by super PACs in the 2024 election, but the reported expenditures were closer to $3 billion. So they didn't even spend all of the money that they raised. And as I mentioned, I'm not sure how effective these things are. Obviously, some ads were powerful, but did they actually sway voters?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be hard pressed to think that they swayed voters in any one direction or the other, but I feel like spends like that are a little bit more meant to like get those people that like, it's already like a thought lingering in the back of their mind, and then they see the ad and they're like, I knew it. Kamala's for they, them.
Right. It's a little more of a push for voters that maybe weren't going to show up at all.
Right.
That last shove over the finish line to actually show up on election day.
In your opinion, what do you think are the best ways that people in the digital age that we live in, where mailers are probably a little bit moot at this point, what do you think is the best thing that people could be spending money on?
So I don't want to jump too much into what our strategy is, but I do.
You don't think have to just some theorizing about what other people could do.
I think that advertisements that don't feel like advertisements are the most effective. I mean, there's been so much just awful discourse I'm sure you've seen about like how great the right-wing podcast scene had been for Donald Trump in 2024. And obviously those aren't true advertisements, right? Like, talking about a person, supporting a person in a more nebulous way on a podcast it's not the same as, a mailer or a radio advertisement or a TV advertisement. So I think that there is some efficacy there. And also we can see just like with the recent primary win just last week of Mamdani in New York, his campaign was so effective because it reached voters not really in a traditional way, but through influencers they liked on Instagram and through, well-made commercials that didn't really feel like a commercial on TikTok.
Yeah, that's the age of TikTok has been, in my humble opinion, great for politics, but I think you're right. I think people of a certain age, when they make a TikTok, it can very quickly slip into the feels like an advertisement ring very quickly.
Right. I mean, I think the most valued thing in most online media today is, whether it's legitimate or not, just a feeling of authenticity. And oftentimes older folks aren't always the great capturing what feels authentic. And I think we could see, obviously, with Mom Donnie's campaign, did very well at feeling authentically for the people of New York.
Right. Well, and I also feel like a lot of just discourse in general has been people screaming, like, please just be authentic. Like, show us who you are as a person. Like, God bless if it shows that you can lead a country or, whatever position you're doing, but just be authentic. Like, show us something real.
Right. Well, and I can't remember what the company is called, but I was just reading an article a few weeks back about how some Democratic strategists are starting a new media company to try to fight back against this right-wing podcast sphere. And one of the quotes in that article was about how they were going to push poll-tested ideas on podcasts. Like, good luck with that.
If there's anything the 2024 election should have told us, it's that polling is only as good as you want it to be. Like, it's not a fix-all. Like, yes, you should rely on the numbers, but like within reason. Right.
Well, and it's been a thing for a lot longer than that, right? Obviously, like, election polling is a little different, but when it comes to ideas, how do you get a good representation of how people actually feel from a telephone poll?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I feel like I'm more thinking about how the polling was showing, no matter what, Democrat, Republican, a lot of the polling was showing people were concerned about the economy, and Democrats at least did not listen to that. So that's where they lose me. Like, okay, if you want to use the polling, great, but let's actually listen to it.
Right. Well, and I don't even know if they didn't listen to it. I feel like it was more that they did listen to it, but they don't know what that means for the average American. There's so much disconnect between
that's a good point.
What the economy is to a person who, is working in a factory in Indiana versus, working at a think tank in DC, right? Like,
right.
There were these ideas to address economic needs like down payment assistance from Kamala. What does that do every day for most people who can't even think about buying a house? So there's this massive disconnect between one party saying, I'll lower the prices, even if it doesn't really make sense, to another party saying, I've got a plan to help you maybe buy a house one day, which, again, doesn't really do anything in the short term.
No, absolutely. So you are an outsider in the PAC and super PAC world. How do you feel that your status as an outsider influence how you approach political change? Do you see it as an advantage or a liability, or maybe both?
I kind of think it's like what I just said, in that, our status as political outsiders gives us a much better connection to the real world. We're not so entrenched in the RNC or DNC that we don't know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck or be normal people. So, speaking as someone on the left, the current structure of the political parties is not all that concerned with problem solving, rather re-election. And there's so much hostility among the American people towards the political establishment that, they've repeatedly shown that their concerns don't always align with those of most Americans. And that's where so much of that hostility comes from. So it is a huge advantage that we're able to tell our potential donors, we're not Democrats, we're not Republicans. We're just people that want politicians that will work harder to make the world a better place.
Do you find something like that tough to sell to donors, or do you or no?
It has been a bit difficult. There's so much distrust in the political process right now. How many times has a person got a text message from Kamala saying, I just need $2 more. That's all we need to, like, and everything is so exaggerated.
The texts kill me. We need to figure out how to stop those. That's what we need to do.
Right. Well, and they're also, full of hyperbole. Like this is the worst thing that's ever happened, and it's worse than it was yesterday when we said the same thing and we needed $2. Now it's so much worse and we need $4. And I think so many people are fed up with that system because ultimately that money doesn't really see results, and nobody's life has improved all that tangibly from this 15-year process of handing money over to politicians.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, have you found that people are receptive to the way that you're going about running the message of your PAC?
Yeah, and I think they have been. Obviously, we're fairly new. We only started at the beginning of 2025, so our messaging hasn't been all of that widespread so far, but just from the conversations I've had and the people I've spoken with, it has been effective because we can relate on a more fundamental level. So, it is very effective to say we're not part of this party that is standing up to fascism in no discernible way, and we're not the fascists. So,
right.
in that regard,
I think it's interesting because I feel like this is you have a pretty good, I guess, example of like where the American people are, that like they are willing to turn to somebody that isn't either party and kind of throw their trust in you, that like you are doing the good thing, you are fighting the good fight without leaning towards any party on its face.
Yeah, and that's kind of our goal, right? Like at the end of the day, the most successful politicians are going to be from major parties, at least in the current world. But that doesn't mean we can't try to push them into a direction that's a little more conducive with success for the average American. And, obviously that's our ultimate goal there is trying to just push the conversation in a way that's more beneficial to people who are just struggling to get by.
You make it sound so simple, though. Like you can just walk up and say, hey, you should do things that help people. It should be that simple, though.
Yeah, it should be. There's so much, hostility in the political world, as everyone's seen. There's so much divisive conversation. But I feel like just most people never actually talk to anybody. Like there's so much, yelling at each other in the comments of a TikTok video or whatnot.
Oh, don't I know it?
Like, right. But like, most people are actually pretty receptive to ideas if you just talk to them face to face and act like they're a real person with real concerns. And I think ultimately it's also about working with people that maybe you wouldn't want to invite to your next party. But, at the end of the day, there are overlapping values that most people have.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a great point. So working within the system of PACs and super PACs, and again, the overall political system and finance that we have right now, good or bad, is there anything that surprised you about how it works, either positively or negatively?
Yeah, I'm going to sound like a boomer here, but I think the biggest surprise has been that I can't get anybody to answer the phone. Like whether it be like a political software company or, like a healthcare nonprofit or just a journalist, nobody will answer the phone and nobody returns emails. And I don't know if that's a result of, being an outsider in this system or just the way of the world today. But yeah, it's very difficult to actually just to talk to these people in these established roles.
And what's funny about that is that everybody always says like, oh, nobody calls me to do like the political stuff. And I'm like, okay, well then leave your number somewhere so that the people that can't get people to pick up the phone can call you.
Right. Like nobody calls you because you've put your name on the like federal do not call list.
Right. And is there anything that has pleasantly surprised you? That sounds a little bit like a negative one. So is there anything that you've been positively struck by?
It is the reception that I've had from a lot of folks that I've had face-to-face conversations with. So many people are excited, kind of as you hinted at, like people are excited that somebody is doing something outside of the major political parties and that it, is to actually help people versus, establish some kind of political power for themselves or, some kind of Doge-like grift.
Yeah, I mean, I've over the last, I want to say especially the last like 2 to 3 months, like I feel like a lot of people are just fed up, and what that will eventually lead to, I'm not that sure, but I feel like probably over the last decade maybe there's been an appetite for like working outside of the two major parties that we have. And I feel like you've struck while the iron is hot, so to speak, that, we're at a moment where people aren't very happy with either party. And I feel like it's only going to go downhill from here in that regard. So, I mean, you've hit the jackpot, I think, in terms of timing.
Yeah. I think it's good timing in that regard. And this is no shade on anyone, but it is often very difficult to shift a person, mobilize a person from being concerned about something and wanting change to like actually showing up on the streets. So, running a super PAC where like you can actually feel good about giving $3 a month and you can actually, lead to positive change is kind of a beneficial structure today because it doesn't really require, leaving your TikTok feed for too long.
Right. Well, that's something I've also never really thought about is that when you donate to political campaigns, it almost feels like lighting a match to money. Like you have no idea where it goes. In most other like nonprofits that you donate to, sometimes you can direct your donation to go to like a certain thing they do, like that's not a thing in political fundraising.
Well, so there is a required expenditure reporting. It's just that it's usually, not very transparent. It's just, we gave $1 million to this political consultant who did something, and we don't really have to tell you what, because we only legally were required to tell you that we gave them the money. And I think that's something where we're a little different in that obviously we haven't brought in tons of money yet and made political expenditures because it's not really an election year yet. But one of our plans is to be a lot more transparent about the work that we're doing and where money goes. And obviously that's a lot easier to say when you don't have to do that yet because there is no expenditure. As we move forward next year in an election year, we'll have updated blog posts on our website where we really do outline what our money is spent on and how effective it is.
So I know you said getting people to pick up the phone has been a struggle, but what are some of the biggest barriers you faced working outside the traditional party structure or donor network besides the phones?
Well, so both parties have some very impressive built infrastructure. Like the Democratic Party has been working on the same voter database since Obama pioneered it in 2008. And these existing, data sets and very comprehensive, voter platforms are super valuable and super important. And that's why so many groups are effective because, they can see that this person has donated this many times to this many things just through the software that they've signed up for. And that's super, super helpful to groups within the establishment. So not having access to that makes things a lot more difficult. But at the same time, those types of repeat donors and people who are so entrenched in the establishment, maybe it wouldn't be that into what we're doing.
Have you found, I'm just curious based off what you just said, is there a community of other kind of groups that are operating in the same kind of nonpartisan type of way that you've been able to find?
Not that I've been in contact with. I'm sure that there are some nonpartisan super PACs, but I think famously, what was it, the Lincoln Project a few years ago, right, where they centrists or something?
Yeah.
In the current political spectrum, there's a huge difference between being not affiliated with a major party and being a centrist. So there are a lot of centrist groups out there, but we have not been in contact with them or reached out to them because I think ideologically, we don't really align with the centrist mentality.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Lincoln Project, wasn't that started by Kellyanne Conway's ex-husband or something?
I think
George
so.
Conway? I think that's the one that he was a part of. Yeah, it's almost disheartening that there's not, somewhere else that you could go to get, not that you need it, but, the support and kind of access to more people, more funds, more, whatever it is. What you're doing is great. That just makes me sad that you're basically the first to do it.
Yeah. And I don't want to say that we're the first because I'm sure that there are other groups out there, but
right.
just by the structure, right, it's not super easy to differentiate what a group is. Obviously, I don't know if you're familiar with open secrets, you can look at expenditures and donors and whatnot, but that doesn't always give the clearest view of what the politics of a group are because, like I said, just a group saying that they gave money to a political consultant for advertising doesn't really tell you what their leanings are.
Right. Well, that's what I always take issue with nonprofits' mission statements. They're always a little bit, depending on the nonprofit and what they're doing, it can sometimes be vague. And I'm okay, let's be honest. Tell me exactly what you're doing, please. Right.
And they're always, I feel like I've already said nebulous twice, but they're always so nebulous, right? We're working to eradicate hunger. What does that mean in action, right?
And how? Well, right. How?
Right.
By raising, what, how does that affect me? And I don't know. But you're right. It irritates me.
Right. Totally agree. And like I said, corporate or a nonprofit that's a 501c4 could bill themselves as, dedicated to reproductive rights or something, but still 49.9% of all of their fundraising could go to political causes that you have no idea what they are or where the money came from. So there is a lot of, obfuscation in the world of nonprofits.
That's really scary.
Yeah,
I'm feeling more anxious.
That probably wasn't the best example. I don't think there are a lot of reproductive rights nonprofits that are secretly
right.
dark money conservative groups, but
sorry, yeah, no, I more meant just the general sense of again, you throw your money at something because you generally believe in what they're doing, and then it's just hope my money made a difference and went where I would have liked it to have gone.
Right, and not that the the CEO makes $3 million a year out of their $5 million raised,
Yeah, hopefully my
and
$10 didn't go to the CEO's Uber.
Right. And I don't want to just like talk bad about nonprofits, because lots of them, like I said, do phenomenal work.
Right.
But,
I'm a big believer in nonprofits, don't get me wrong.
But there is some shady dealings in the nonprofit world.
Yeah, no, I believe it. So do you worry, perhaps, that playing in the same arena, playing the same game as corporate-funded PACs and super PACs, do you think it risks legitimizing the system that you're trying to change?
Kind of not at all. I feel like that might have been a concern 15 years ago. But, as I mentioned earlier, super PACs raised $5 billion last year and spent nearly $3 billion on political campaigning in 2024. So the system's already legitimate. There's nothing that we could do to further cement its status as legitimate. The only thing that we can do is try to work within it to stop it.
Do you see the system changing at all? Not in a philosophical way, but more in a, do you see in the future there being a way that this kind of dark money PAC and all the, rich people trading money to other things, do you see that system ever kind of going away? Or, sorry, not even going away, just taking a back seat maybe?
Not in the immediate future, but I think there are paths to change. It won't be easy, especially with the current composition of the Supreme Court, because, inevitably there will be a legal challenge to any campaign finance legislation that's passed. Obviously, that's probably the best way, is to, pass some kind of legislation limiting political spending in some way. But, a motivated president could also gum up the works in the shorter term through just a series of executive actions. They'd obviously face judicial challenges and wouldn't stand the test of time, but we've seen how effective inundating the system with executive orders can be just through the first 6 months of Donald Trump's term. And this is something that's always existed, but no president's actually worked that hard to exploit it until right now.
Right. You touched on this a little bit already, but have you found ways to maintain transparency and grassroots credibility while still operating under the super PAC model?
Like I said, we're pretty new, so we haven't really had to do this yet, but our plan is to be pretty transparent about where our expenditures go. And obviously there is the mandatory donor reporting to the FEC, so everywhere our money comes from will be open. And it might be more of a worry if we had some large corporate donors, but I don't think that they're going to donate money to us.
You'll cross that bridge when you get there.
Right. And obviously if that happens, if some corporation wants to give us $1 million, I'll personally record a video outlining exactly how that money will be spent. But I don't think that large corporations who are donating these kinds of extreme amounts of political money are looking to give money to progressives.
One can hope. Give it a couple years, okay? Maybe the pendulum will swing.
Right. Well, and the other thing is that, it's really easy to start your own super PAC. Obviously, there are a bunch of hoops to jump through, but we saw it with Elon Musk. He just started his own. So the wealthiest people probably already have a pretty concrete, established system of where their money goes.
Yeah, no, I don't doubt it. I mean, I'm sure anybody could start a PAC or a super PAC, but I'm sure Elon Musk has people doing it for him. I'm sure he didn't personally sit down and read the campaign finance.
Right. He didn't personally, but
you and I don't have the money to pay somebody else to start a PAC or super PAC for us. You did the damn thing. You sat down, you figured it out. That makes you 10 times better than anything Elon Musk did.
Right. Now, if only I had $300 million to try to influence elections.
Couple years. Just give it a minute. Lottery's coming. I can feel it.
Yeah. All of our campaign finance money has just gone to buying Powerball tickets.
Yeah. So hear me out. I'm going to take your $10,000. I'm going to buy all the pick threes. And then I'm going to use the winnings that are hopefully $300 million and then reinvest it. That sounds like a pretty good plan.
I'm actually just going to buy tickets to every sporting event I can go to. And at those events, I'm just going to buy 50-50 raffle tickets.
Seems like a really, really great plan. I'm not sure why anybody's not done that yet.
Much better odds.
Totally agree. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more deeply about what Just Future Fund is. How do you decide what types of candidates or causes that Just Future Fund is going to support? What is kind of the litmus test for who gets backing? Right.
And just to once again reiterate, the thing about a super PAC is that they cannot coordinate with a candidate or a party. So everything is an independent expenditure. Anything that we do is not in conjunction with a party or a candidate. So that's just an important differentiation for a super PAC. But
Wait. So, like, theoretically, if a PAC or super PAC put out an ad that was, like, anti a certain candidate, they shouldn't be going to the other person that it's, like, not anti against and, like, clearing it with them?
correct. They are not legally allowed to coordinate. There are workarounds that PACs do. Like oftentimes you'll see in competitive races, candidates will have a section on their website that is basically directed directly towards PACs with the exact language they want them to use in their campaigns, but they're not actually directly legally allowed to communicate.
That's about to make every, like, super PAC ad that I see so much more interesting. I always found it crazy, especially in 2024, how the PAC and super PAC ads so coordinated with, like, what like, they seem so in tandem that, like, it's almost mind-blowing that legally, officially, they're not allowed to talk about it together.
Right. Well, and you'll often see in those attack ads that the super PACs will go much further than a candidate would be willing to, because there's no liability and the candidate can distance themselves from it. Like I just in the news last week, right? A super PAC associated with Andrew Cuomo put out an ad with Zoran Mandani with like enhanced Muslim features.
Oh my God, yes.
Right. So like that wasn't Andrew Cuomo's direct doing. That was the super PAC associated with him that was supporting him. So there is plausible deniability among those.
That might be the most important thing you're going to say on this episode, because now my wheels are turning and I'm kind of stunned.
Right. It's a very odd system, but I also think it's one of the benefits to us because so many candidates have to fall within a party line, but maybe they don't actually believe that, or maybe they have a track record that kind of shows the opposite of what the DNC is pushing them towards. So that's one benefit of a super PAC. But to get back to your original question, like we
Sorry, I got sidetracked. I got too stunned.
Yeah. It's weird, right? I mean, and that's, like I said, super PACs are independent expenditure only, so no coordination with a political party or candidate, and it's kind of the Wild West. Like I said, so we're openly progressive. So any candidate we support will be someone who shares our core value of, making the lives of the most vulnerable Americans better in some way. So this means candidates must support things like increases to social services, universal health care. They've got to be committed to things like racial justice and wealth redistribution. And ultimately, they've got to be somebody that will actually fight for the working class over wealthy donors. Obviously, that doesn't leave a lot of candidates, especially like viable candidates. So, there aren't a ton of candidates that we feel great about throwing weight behind. So we can also use our resources in opposition of candidates that we don't think will uphold our values, as we just mentioned with these super PAC attack ads. So like right now, for example, we're focusing on our opposition against Republican David Valadao in California's 22nd congressional district. We don't really have a candidate we want to support in that race at the moment, but in a district in which 70% of residents are enrolled in Medicaid, a representative that would vote in favor of a spending bill that would cut $700 billion or $1 trillion. I can't remember what the number on the newest bill is. A large number,
fine.
Right? A large amount of money cut from Medicaid. That person doesn't deserve to be in office when 70% of their constituents rely on the services they're voting to cut. So we can use our resources to ensure folks like Valadao aren't reelected in 2026.
Are there any areas in the country specifically that like you tend to keep an eye on within, the PAC money?
Yeah. So at the moment, it's kind of a delicate balance of races that are, winnable, so to speak, like the Valadao race. He's going to have a tough time winning re-election, and we want to, dogpile
make it as hard as possible.
Right. But there are also places in which, people are kind of screaming for a candidate that will represent them that maybe are less viable in terms of polling. Places like West Virginia or, the historic Rust Belt and coal regions of the world, of the U.S. are also places we're keeping an eye on. If suitable candidates do end up running there, we'll try to support them. And also, there are a lot of centrist Democrats in way more left-leaning districts that we're keeping an eye on in case somebody that's a little more progressive does pop up to challenge them in primaries.
That's a funny story about, the progressive versus centrist. My representative for my entire life had been Jan Schakowsky. She recently announced that she was retiring, but when I first moved to DC, I had interviewed with her office to work there. And in the interview, the woman interviewing me said, she is part of the Progressive Caucus. Like, does that affect if you'd want to be employed? And I was like, Progressive Caucus? That's news to me. She's not, like, if you were to have asked me before I interviewed her, I would have said she was probably a centrist.
Right. Well, and I forget the exact history of the Progressive Caucus, but like it's been around a while, and it might have been progressive like in 1992, but it's not quite the case anymore.
Well, right, but I mean, I couldn't understand why that wasn't something that was like, because wasn't like AOC was part of the Progressive Caucus? Like, I'm like, I would never have put Jan Schakowsky and AOC in the same bucket.
Right. Well, there are all of these folks that are kind of, I don't know, grandfathered into the Progressive Caucus, right? Like,
I assume she was.
Right. And I don't, like I said, I don't remember the exact history, but I believe it coincided with like Clinton's first election. Someone who also ran on progressive values and then decided to fully backtrack through his 8 years. So progressive has a different meaning among the establishment.
Oh, absolutely. You already talked a little bit about changing in the campaign finance system. You had said that this is kind of just the way it is right now. Maybe it can change in the future. Do you think that the system that you have created for yourself of like being an outsider and creating a super PAC, do you think that is a good workaround? Should more people be doing that? Or what are other ways that people can effectively change the campaign system?
Yeah, so like I think it is effective in the shorter term. Obviously, we need direct legislation change. But, if a person wants to get involved, find the local candidates that you want to support and volunteer with them. Knock on doors, film TikTok videos for them. It doesn't necessarily mean wading into the world of campaign finance to create change. Like there are many other ways. This is just the one that we decided upon, but there are other effective ways. Talking to your neighbors is a surprisingly effective thing.
Things are so charged right now that I feel like it can be a little scary to like bring up the political conversation. Like when I'm at work and people know I have a podcast, but when they're like, oh, like what's it about? I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, oh, it's about politics. And like, oh, why did you start it? And then I have to tell the story about how after election day, the whole essence is that I was disappointed after the results of the election. So I'm always like, yeah, so after the election, I was sad. And I kind of wait to see like what their face is going to be like before, like it's scary to have those conversations. But people have been like all those interactions I've had at work in places where you wouldn't typically be talking about your political leanings. People are generally receptive to like what you're saying and like what your story or mission or whatever it is.
Right. And there is so much, and maybe this is just like the inner Midwest of me coming out, but like it's so important just to talk to people, right? Like I feel like so many conversations people have politically, the entire motivation behind the conversation, and it's so transparent from the beginning, is trying to convince someone of something or sell your idea. But like just talking to someone and finding out what's important to them and how your goals and interests are actually pretty closely aligned, even if they don't manifest the same politically all of the time, is so important, because the way to sell someone on a new idea is to understand that idea is actually something that interests them, not in a condescending way.
Right. No, absolutely. And I feel like a lot of people are so scared of having those conversations just because of like, especially like what we see on the internet. And I think what people need to remember is that what you're seeing on the internet, those are just the people that are the loudest. That's not necessarily what the majority of the population is going to think and feel and react to you like that.
Right. Well, and I think there's this myth that so much of the population is some like undecided person in the middle, the person that's going to be convinced by Liz Cheney to vote for a Democrat. But like, I don't think most people actually view the world in this like political spectrum way. So many people are really just concerned about their well-being and what's going to happen next and whether they're going to get a raise next year, prices are going to go up, that there are so many conversations that can be had that aren't face value political, but can actually impact political leanings and make political change.
Right. And unfortunately for, the people that are the loudest on the internet, like, and myself included, it is hard for me to fathom that there are people out there that like aren't that engaged in these conversations and like don't know that the big beautiful bill is supposed to be passed tonight. Like, that's unfathomable to me. But at the same time, like, I am always willing to have those conversations. But it does make it more difficult to be like, oh, did you hear about that thing, and just try to start the conversation. They're like, no. Then I'm sat there being like, how? Like, how do you mean no? You didn't turn on a TV? Like, so it can be frustrating, but I think you're right. Like, it comes with just start talking, just start the conversation, and the rest will follow.
Right. Well, and as we talked about, like, so many people don't have any conversations. Like I said, they don't have to start in a directed political way. Like, just talk to a person about their lives, and you'll learn a lot about them and about the world. Right. Well, that's what I always find somewhat infuriating about conversations like that, when they come out straight to the gate, like, trying to be political, where I'm like, okay, like, you've already made this a little bit more aggressive than I think it needed to be, and two, that would make this in any way constructive. Right. There's a percentage of the population that is dead set on their ideology, and we don't really need to spend that much time in those spaces, right? That's what I mean, like, with me, like, when I'm an out and loud and proud Democrat, like, when Republicans in my life will come to me and try to say something, I'm like, I'm not the one. Right. I'm set in my, like, we're good. There is nothing you can convince me of right now. Like, I'm headstrong, not really swayed. Like, you got to take that somewhere else, to somebody that's, willing to take that in and, like, use it to mold their opinions, because it's not me. Yeah. There are a lot of extra loud folks trying to convince people that will never be convinced. Yeah. Overall message shows just be nice. Talk to people, get engaged with people. It's the good neighborly thing to do. But two, like, that's the way out of this, is building that community and camaraderie and whatever other word for friendship you want to use. Yeah, absolutely. Having conversations that are not poll tested. Of course. Yes, as everybody should. Right. So you talked about getting into, we're gearing up to go into the midterm soon. We got a presidential election, hopefully, in about 3.5 years. What will success look like for Just Future Fund? Not just electorally, but in terms of kind of reshaping the political landscape. Obviously, most importantly, it's winning races. We want to elect truly progressive candidates, but we also want to show that it's feasible for progressives and democratic socialists to win seats, even when they're at a material disadvantage. And, we'd originally scheduled this podcast recording before the New York City mayoral primary, but, at that time, it looked certain that Andrew Cuomo, backed by millions of dollars of PAC money, would win that Democratic primary. But shockingly, he lost to the severely underfunded Democratic Socialist, Zohran Mamdani. And I think ultimately success will look like us helping more candidates that like Mamdani, win seats. Politicians who so clearly care about making the world better for just the average person and helping them get elected across the country. That primary was wild to me. And everybody keeps asking me, like what do you think about Mamdani? Like, what do you think about the election? And I'm like, I think it's interesting to watch somebody who had all the cards stacked up against them in terms of, money, ads, whatever it was, and he overcame it. That's the best part of this election, is somebody, the DNC finally didn't meddle, or whatever they've been doing that made Hillary get in instead of Bernie. They didn't meddle, and he won, and did it on his own, with his own campaign. That's the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. No matter what anybody thinks about him. Like, he was the underdog, and he did it. Aren't we supposed to be rooting for the underdogs? Right. And I think this is the first time that the DNC has meddled, right? Like, they sent Bill Clinton out to campaign for him in the final days, right? I saw some tweet that was like, when Bill Clinton comes to campaign for you, you should know that you're about to lose an election. Right. Like, the establishment loved Cuomo and tried very hard to get him elected. And there's been so much conversation from, like, mainstream DNC analysts, like, about how, like, it just shows how important TikTok is and stuff like that, but like it misses the message that, like, actually, like, his campaign was run very well on ideas that people relate to. And I think that's also the biggest takeaway from the 2024 election, right? Like, we briefly touched on it earlier, but, like, Trump ran a very simple campaign where he said simple things that appealed to a lot of people, like lowering gas prices. Mamdani has done the same thing, where he's told you he's going to lower your grocery prices and freeze rent, and those are things that are important to everyday people, way more important than whatever super PAC ad Andrew Cuomo could come up with.
an incredible story. I'm kind of happy that we recorded this later than planned, because that's, I think, just speaks to, exactly what you're saying. Is I'm excited. I'm excited for New York City. I don't live there, but I'm excited for them.
Yeah. And he seems so genuine. Like, there have been a handful of progressive candidates who have promised a lot and severely under-delivered or shifted further right than they campaigned on. Eric Adams, Bill de Blasio, just in recent history. So it really does seem like Mamdani will at least remain consistent to his ideology.
Right. And I do understand, I don't know if this was just in my education or if this is a broader political science thing, but the whole notion of like where you stand depends on where you sit. Some of it I feel like can be attributed to that, but like Eric Adams far surpassed where you stand depends on where you sit.
Yeah, it's been an ugly couple of years there, and somehow he's avoided prison. So good for him in that regard.
At least he's walking out a winner in like one sense.
That is true. He didn't look like a winner walking through the New York City Pride Parade the other day, if you saw the videos of that. But he's not going to prison, so he can always fall back on that one.
Well, we already know what's going to happen. He's going to like show up at Mar-a-Lago once he's out of office and sort of podcast probably. And maybe his own PAC. Like, possibilities are endless. He's just getting started.
Right. Well, so, Candace Owen was famously fired a year or so ago. So there is a space for a replacement on the Daily Wire, and it's probably going to be Eric Adams. I don't know if there's like a betting network for that, but that's where I put my money.
What's that betting website? Polymarket? Can we add that one in there?
Yeah. Eric Adams to get a show on the Daily Wire.
Add that one to my 2025 bingo card. My God. All right. That is all I have. Is there anything else that you feel like I might have missed?
No, I think we got a good grasp on super PACs, how they're largely awful, but how
yours,
we think that
yours is fine.
Right. And how we think that we can utilize that to create some progressive change.
Right. And I feel like this also just speaks to, like, look at where you're putting your money. Research the places that you're giving money to. It's so important to understand what you're funding.
Yeah, absolutely. And while you won't get the clearest picture, go on websites like Open Secrets, or you can even look on the FEC.gov, and you can see where money is being spent by super PACs and other groups, and you can determine whether that's worthwhile.
Right. Due diligence is important. It's your money. You earned it. Make sure you spend it wisely.
Yeah, and don't ever give anybody money that sends you a text message saying they just need $2 to stop fascism.
The texts like kill me. Like, the woman that's running against Lauren Boebert, she texted me today, I think personally, off of her personal cell phone. And she was like, Paige, I need you. And I'm like, no, you don't. You actually do not, because I know you got my number from some sort of like Act Blue
right
distribution list, and I don't live in your district. So target somebody else.
Right. They've seen that you've donated money to probably candidates that don't live in your district who could probably win. They've added that to their data set and now have your contact information forever. I'm like,
well, and the worst part, not to get on a tangent, but at some point in my life, my father donated to a Republican candidate in my name and number. So I'm on the Republican text chains too. Those ones are impossible to get out of. Act Blue, if I say stop, like, they usually stop for like a couple months. Like, I think they give me like a little freeze. The Republican ones, I'm in purgatory every election season.
Yeah, well, so I used to live in Pennsylvania. Lived in Pennsylvania.
That's a toughie.
In 2016 and voted in 2016. So I think for the rest of my life, I will get calls every 2 years telling me to vote for whatever candidate because it's a swing state. Yeah, it's a tough system.
Yeah, no, I believe it. That's the other, didn't even cover like the swing states. When I go to Arizona, my mom has a house there, so I'll go visit. During election years, you turn on the TV and it's the most insane ads I've ever seen in my entire life. And they're almost all by the PACs just fighting for airtime. Right.
And just to circle back to be informative, you will see on these advertisements, because we were talking about independent expenditures, and not to totally derail the conversation, but just as an informative thing, you will see a disclaimer on all of these ads saying that they are paid for by such and such PAC, and they're not authorized by any candidate or party. So you can clearly differentiate between an official campaign ad and these outside expenditures by the legally mandated disclaimer you'll see on the bottom of a TV ad or a mailer.
Well, that's what I was thinking when you were first talking about it, I was like, oh my God, I can't wait until the next election. I was thinking about like watching the ads and looking for who paid for what. Like, that's follow the money. See who paid for, whatever that advertisement was.
Right. You'll suddenly see how much 40% of the ads are paid for by the Koch brothers or whatnot.
No, absolutely. So. All right. Thank you so much again. It was so great to have you on. And I will have your website and all your information linked in the show notes so everybody can go check that out. And yeah, that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for tuning into this week's episode of Current Affairs Unfiltered. And thank you to Adam for coming on and telling us all about Just Future Fund and what exactly a PAC even is anyways. If you would like to get involved with Just Future Fund, you can find them on Instagram at Just Future Fund or on Blue Sky at justfuturefund.com for the latest info on their campaigns. To learn more about them or to sign up for a mailing list, you can visit their website, justfuturefund.com. If you wanted to contribute directly to their efforts, you can do so at actblue.com/donates/justfuture. I will not be back next week. It is the last week of July, and therefore I am taking it off. But I will be back the first week of August with a new solo episode where we will cover everything chaos. And until then, keep asking questions, stay engaged. Maybe you should support your local PAC. I'll see you guys next time.